Good morning.
Oh, that John Bercow has proved rather pesky for the government, hasn't he, in terms of Brexit? What are you going to do now?
Well, the Speaker has raised the bar with his ruling yesterday. Clearly, that merits serious consideration, and we will discuss it, as you say, at Cabinet this morning. We always said that we, in terms of bringing a vote back for a third time, we would need to see a shift from parliamentarians in terms of the support. I think that still is the case. And we've seen from the European Union that they themselves see, for example, clarity on any extension as a material issue for the House to consider. But obviously we will discuss it this morning and take a response from there.
So a lot of discussions to be had. One of the quick questions yesterday was legally, can the Speaker do this? Have you explored that option as to whether he's got a legal right to do this?
Well, the Speaker's the referee, and it's important that all of us in the House of Commons respect the role of the Speaker, the authority of the Chair. But the Speaker himself has pointed to possible solutions. He himself has said in earlier rulings that we shouldn't be bound by precedent, and obviously this is based on a precedent going back to 1604. The Speaker himself has said that where the will of the House is for a certain course of action, then it's important that that will of the House is respected. So it's important we look at his previous rulings in the context of yesterday's ruling as part of taking our next step.
OK, so you're investigating his ruling to see what your options are. One of them that's been discussed by your colleagues is prolonging Parliament, essentially ending this session of Parliament and starting another one earlier so you can put forward your vote again. It sounds very complicated and long-winded, but it is a possibility. Is that something that you consider doing?
No, I think the one thing, for all the divisions that there are in the House of Commons at the moment and all the divisions that there are in the country on Brexit, I think the one thing everyone would agree on is involving Her Majesty in any of the issues around Brexit is not the way forward. So I don't see that as a realistic option. What we need to do is secure the deal. That's what businesses watching your programme are crying out for. They want the certainty of the deal. The vast majority of people I speak to say, let's just get on with this. We've got a deal. It's the only deal on the table. It's taken over 2 years to negotiate, so let's get this deal agreed. And we are seeing significant movement from colleagues.
When will the next vote be then? Because you keep saying you have got this deal. The Speaker of the House has blocked you from tabling it this week. When will we see it again? You're saying it's not dead in the water. We are going to see it again. So when will that be? Is it the case that the Prime Minister is going to have to go and see EU representatives on Thursday and ask for an extension?
Well, we need to consider it, obviously, at Cabinet. I think the ruling from the Speaker has raised the bar, and I think that makes it more unlikely that the vote would be this week. But we need to consider that. Obviously, the ruling was only yesterday afternoon, and Cabinet.
So when do you think we're likely
morning
to see it? Next week?
Well, what the Speaker has said in his ruling is that there needs to be something that is different. And you can have the same motion, but where the circumstances have changed, then obviously that has a difference in terms of how members of Parliament would vote on a particular motion. So we need to look at the detail of the ruling. We need to consider that in the context of some earlier rulings that don't particularly align with yesterday's.
Well, that is something that the Speaker of the House said. He said you need to bring this vote back to the House and it needs to be different. There needs to be substantial change. You can't just keep bringing the same vote back. So how are you going to change it?
Well, the fact that a number of members of Parliament have said that they will change their vote points to the fact that there are things that are different. We're obviously in discussions, for example, with our confidence and supply partners in the DUP.
Yeah, how are you going to win them over? Because they're crucial.
Well, they are, absolutely, and they're our confidence and supply, and they've raised issues in terms of the union that we're very keen to address. So we need to look at the issues around the extension. We need to look at the issues in terms of parliamentarians and what reassurance we've been able to give, and whether that passes the test that the Speaker has set in terms of what is different. But you can have the same motion, but with different circumstances around it. And the Speaker himself accepts that point because he allowed for the second meaningful vote for exactly that reason.
All right, let's just talk about extending Article 50 because, you know, signs are pointing to the fact that the Prime Minister may well have to ask for that at the end of this week. And it's important to ask you in your role as Brexit Secretary, because there's a bizarre turn of events last week where you wound up the debate on extending Article 50 for the government, commending the motion to the House, and then you joined several other members of Cabinet in voting against it. So where do you stand on extending Article 50 so we can get this deal done?
Well, I stand with the Prime Minister, which is the best way forward is to get a deal, which will require now a short extension. And that that is the best way of delivering Brexit. But to clear up the point, because there was some confusion, you're absolutely right, with my vote last Thursday. And it was the fourth vote. It was an amendable motion. Obviously, we needed to defeat the amendments. The entirety of my speech, all but the last line, was on addressing those amendments. Those amendments would have taken control of the order paper, which was a threat both to Brexit but also constitutionally. And it was right that we addressed those. Obviously, having done so, the purpose of the motion had been served, and it was also served because we had committed to a further motion on the 25th of this month. So it's a question of being the fourth vote, not the first, and a lot of the reports suggested it was the first vote.
Again, it's all sort of higgledy-piggledy and tying everything up in knots with different motions. Let's be clear. Do you support an extension to Article 50 now at this moment?
Well, I do. I've been clear that I don't want an extension, but we are now in a situation where we do need to have an extension to pass the legislation for the withdrawal bill, because it's not just passing a vote. We then need to ratify that and pass the legislation, and there's not an opportunity to do now that in the remaining days. So there will need to be a short extension. But I think what viewers of this programme will be saying is 3 years after they voted for leave, it really is time now for members of Parliament to deliver on what many of them said in their manifestos, deliver on the biggest vote in our country's history, back the Prime Minister's deal. It's the only deal on the table.
The 29th of March. The law says that now as well. Are you ruling it out? Because you've said that you're backing now an extension to Article 50, and that will probably mean not leaving the EU on the 29th of March.
Well, it's not going to be realistic to ratify because obviously parliamentarians have blocked the previous two votes. But what's important now is we get a decision on the vote and on the deal as soon as possible, because I think businesses need that certainty, and I think your viewers, 3 years after they voted to leave the European Union, want to see MPs deliver on what the majority of them said they would do at the last general election. This is the only deal on the table from the Prime Minister. She's taken over 2 years to negotiate it. The EU are clear it's the only deal on the table. Business need the certainty of this deal, and it's time that Parliament comes together and gets behind it.
OK, Stephen Barclay, Brexit Secretary, thank you for speaking to us here on Sunrise.